Sweet, man. I'll go ahead and get started and we'll get through this presentation. Again, this is being recorded, so everybody else will have a chance to take a look at what you're looking at. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. So as I mentioned what we on the other day in the group, I wanted to take this week and talk about protein intake, why it's important to understand, what things are going well, why protein plays a big part of that when things aren't going well. So we're going to define protein. We're going to talk about benefits that your body needs from it. Best sources, best case sources as well. We'll talk about that. How do we know when we're not getting enough protein? We'll discuss that. Exactly how much does a person need to eat every day? We'll talk that too. And then, maybe some common measuring tools so people can understand how to keep track of this as well. So, and then we'll have some time for any Q&As that you have at the end. So what is protein? It's very essential to, building your body what it is, right? So it's tiny pieces called amino acids. They link together to form longer chains, and that's kind of what our body is made of. So we need to use it to build and repair muscles. So you talked about your push-ups and your squats. Your protein intake is going to allow your body to replenish and grow back stronger the muscles that you use in the workout. So you want to get stronger at push-ups. You're making those tiny little tears in your pecs every time you're doing push-ups, when you're resting, when you're sleeping, when you're refueling by eating more protein. Those muscles grow back stronger, which allows you to hit the workouts and the performance that you're looking for. So in your case, going from every 60 seconds doing a certain thing to maybe down every 30 seconds and so on. And we'll find different ways to challenge you too. So that's really the big part of protein and how that plays out. Organ function too. So when people's organs aren't functioning well, a lot of times it can be because of not adequate protein in their diets. Hair and nail quality too. You'll see that as a result and change as a result of not getting enough protein in your body. It's also one of the food macronutrients. So there's protein, carbohydrates, and fat. Those are the macronutrients, plenty of micronutrients, but macronutrients are the basic building blocks of food. So everything you're eating is going to have some sort of measurement of protein, carbohydrates, and fat. Not all foods have protein in them, so we'll talk about the list there as well. Ideal sources. We can get into this. So we've got some animal-based sources we'll talk about, and some others that people can use to be successful with getting enough protein. So animal-based, you got chicken, turkey breasts, other types of poultry, lean ground meat. So that could be ground beef, ground pork, ground turkey, lean pork as well, steak, salmon, tuna, other seafoods, any whitefish, shrimp. Those would be good ideal sources of animal-based protein. You might have some questions on some other protein that you've seen out there, and we're certainly going to dig into that. Some other that are not necessarily animal-based, but you could still call them good and ideal sources would be things like egg whites, low or non-fat cottage cheese, Greek yogurt. Those are really good grab-and-go solutions for a lot of people. Protein powder too, whether that's a whey protein. Not everyone can process dairy. So pea protein and casein proteins are also really good sources of protein supplements that you could use. So if you're finding yourself a little short and let's say you're eating 80% of your required protein intake from food, but you got a little bit of a gap, that's where a supplement like a whey protein, a pea protein, or casein protein might come into play to help you get to the required amount every day that you need. People ask me all the time, though, they say, well, what about beans? Isn't there protein in beans? Absolutely, there is. But we're talking about ideal sources, and we're going to break down what's good about beans and then where the advantage of the animal protein would be over beans. I always tell people make an educated decision. Maybe culturally, you grew up in a place where beans were accepted as a major source of protein. That's okay. Just want people to be educated on where the advantages and disadvantages might play out if you're looking at bean source protein. So here's some good info about that. And I always encourage people to go back to this recording multiple times, hit pause, make sure you're taking notes and you pull from this information what you need. So animal protein contains what we call the essential amino acids. There's 9 essential ones. So these are amino acids that your body cannot produce on its own. It needs help. It needs food taken in or supplement taken in order to get these essential amino acids. There are 20 total. So 11 of those 20 our body can produce of some sort, but 9, the essential ones, need help. We need outside source, outside foods to come in because we cannot produce those amino acids on our own. Beans are incomplete because they lack one or more of those 9 essential ones. So if you were, counting on beans to be a big part of your protein intake, you would have to combine them with other foods to make it a complete protein source. So beans alone won't get the job done in terms of covering all 9 essential amino acids, but they will go a long way of getting some protein intake. So by all means, I'm not saying beans are terrible and you should never eat them. I'm just saying when you stack them up against animal-based protein, there are going to be some discrepancies there. Typically, for most people, from a digestion standpoint, animal proteins are going to be easier to digest. Again, that's a case-by-case basis. You might talk to, someone in your family or someone who says, "Man, every time I eat chicken, I got some inflammation. That's really causing me a lot of problems." So some people have to go the plant-based because maybe their just body has been rejecting certain animal-based proteins, and that's fine. But generally, for the most of the population, it's going to be easier for animal-based proteins to be digested in the bloodstream versus plant-based. The other thing you're going to see is if you're into building lean mass, like you talked about, especially Tim, you want better performance in the gym with your calisthenic workouts and things like that, then the animal protein is going to be a better way because it's going to have one of the amino acids called leucine, which helps with muscle growth and muscle recovery. So keep that in mind. If you're a performance-based person, you really want to get the most out of each workout and want to make sure you're maximizing when you recover and also the performance itself and the gains that you're looking for. Make sure you're taking a look at animal protein and make sure it's a big part of your protein intake. Yes, beans are high in fiber. We get that a lot, and most animal proteins don't contain fiber. Also, beans can help lower LDL. So if you've been at the doctor and your LDL cholesterol levels are higher than what you want, and let's say they're threatening to put you on a statin, maybe take a look at adding more fiber, which beans could be a big source of that to help lower that naturally before you have to resort to just medication for that. So now let's talk about the risk. What happens if we're not eating enough protein? I always like to try to tie this back into people that work at ClearVue and what they experience in terms of the physical demands of your job. And so loss of strength, right? If you can't lift the big heavy panels of glass, then are you as effective to the company, right? So that's something that you should consider if your job requires you to lift a lot of weights and do it on a consistent basis. So not having enough strength to get the job done, losing muscle mass are very realistic risks if you're not eating enough protein, and you've got to have those amino acids if you want to see those gains. Another one that people don't necessarily think about is changing in mood, right? So when you have blood sugar spikes, because most of your diet is comprised of carbohydrates and fat, carbohydrates are really, really, they play a big part of raising blood sugar up and down. And so if you're eating a lot of fruit or highly processed carbohydrates and you're not balancing with adequate protein, you're going to see that blood sugar go up and down. And when that blood sugar is going up and down, then your mood is also going to be up and down. Sometimes you're crashing, you're hangry. We hear that term a lot, hangry, and that's typically because blood sugar gets too low and people are like, "Oh, I got to eat something," right? And so imagine being in front of a customer at your job and all of a sudden, you're in a stressful situation, but your blood sugar is not regulated because you haven't been paying attention to protein intake. Again, that can affect performance on the job. So we have to be careful and be mindful of that. Frequent sickness. If you're sick all the time and you're always catching a cold, your wife is bringing something home, your kid is bringing something home from school or daycare, and you seem to be the one that always catches it, that's also a sign that maybe you should take a further look into your diet and make sure you're getting enough protein so you can fuel your immune system better. Brittle hair and nails, right? So some people think, okay, well, that's just cosmetic. Well, not necessarily, right? When these nails get too brittle and you're trying to do common tasks around the house, you're going to find injuries coming up a little bit more frequently, whether you're cracking nails, hair falling out, brushing it out because, the hair is just not as strong. The follicles aren't as strong as they used to be. All of those things can be tied to not enough protein in the diet. And then bone density. As we all get older, we all have the risk of taking on stress fractures when we fall, we bump into things. Osteoporosis risk for certain parts of the population are a big part. So we need to make sure our bones are healthy and strong as we get older. And the way we're going to do that is making sure we have enough protein in our diet. So here's a question. How much protein do I need? That's a magic question. And the answer is it kind of depends. So I have three realistic scenarios here, what I call the gold standard, the silver standard, and bronze standard. And we'll kind of talk through that. So gold standard would be, okay, if I'm a 200-pound man, I want to eat 1 gram per pound of my total body weight in protein. So that means for me, 200 grams a day would be my daily goal. That would be gold standard. That's someone in a scenario who they're actively doing strength and resistance training, and they actively want to see their performance and their strength continue to increase. Also, people that are looking to put on a little bit more size, they need to make sure that they're fueling their bodies with protein close to this amount. Now, just because we're eating this much protein doesn't necessarily mean our body will continue to get wider and wider and wider. I know a lot of people, especially women I talk to, they're always concerned is if I eat so much protein, am I going to just bust out of my clothes? Not at all. If you have the right balance of protein and it's the right type based on everything else that you're eating with the carbohydrate and fat intake, you don't stand the risk of getting bigger, bigger, bigger like some people think they do. It takes a lot of work. You're talking hours and hours and hours in the gym, lifting heavy, heavy weights, and probably even exceeding this gold standard when it comes to protein intake. So if you're someone who really is serious about wanting to take your performance to the next level, then you have to make sure you're getting close to that gold standard when it comes to protein intake. Silver standard, one I like, and I'll have a graphic that'll better explain this, is looking at the lean body mass. So if I'm a 200-pound man and I have about 165 pounds of lean mass on me, then I want to have 165 grams of protein every single day. And that would be a really, really good goal to shoot for. You're still going to be ahead of, the game in terms of population, head and shoulders above everyone else, even if you're at that silver standard. So I'm actually going to go ahead and flip over to this screen just so you can see it and see if I can zoom a little bit. Everybody that I tested at ClearVue had this in-body printout. And I have two arrows here so we can understand, how do I know how much I weigh? What's a good accurate measure? Because maybe a lot of you don't have a bathroom scale. You can go back to that sheet from a couple weeks ago from our initial test. And again, I put this yellow arrow here to signify gold standard. So if this was a 130-pound female, as you see here with my mouse, age 51, and she weighs 130 pounds, gold standard for her would be 130 grams of protein a day. So again, gold standard, that's what she would go off of. Silver standard would say, okay, how much lean mass does she have? We want to have at least minimum that much protein in gram to support the lean mass that she has. If she has less than that, she risks even going lower with her lean mass. So 81 pounds out of 130, not necessarily a great number here, but it's one that she could shoot for to maintain what she has. And she has a lot of work to do. If you see my mouse up here, she's got some body fat to lose, but the machine also wants her to gain 8.5 pounds of lean mass. So she has a lot of work to do. And for her, this would be absolute bare minimum if she wants to stop herself from regressing. Okay, then going back to here, this slide, bronze standard. If someone's not necessarily concerned about just, okay, I need to gain as much lean mass as possible, and they're more on the lines of, I just want to be in maintenance. A good standard here would be 30% of total daily caloric intake coming from protein. So quick math here. If I do 1,600 calories a day for someone who weighs, I don't know, 170 pounds, then I want 30% of that, which is 120 grams of protein grams daily. Now, how do I get that math? Real easy. I'm going to type this in here as the video goes on. 1 gram of protein is 4 calories. So you can do the math and know. So if someone's eating 100 grams of protein, which seems like a lot, but we realize it's only 4 calories per gram. And if someone's getting 1,500 to 1,800 calories a day, that's really not a lot. So what I'm trying to tell my clients that I want 30% of their caloric intake to come from protein, The pushback is, well, that's too many calories. I'm going to be so big. Not really. If you ate just 100 grams a day and that's all you ate, you're only eating 400 calories. That's it. So you have to understand where this math works out. So you're not fooling yourself into thinking you're going to be eating too much protein. Okay. All right, so now let's talk and finish up with some easy ways to measure protein. So if you're someone who is, technologically inclined, you really love being on your smartphone, you use it for all facets of your life, you're using it to manage your finances, do all these other things with it, then maybe the smartphone app might be a good choice for you. There are plenty of free apps out there. My favorite one is the one I've listed first, which is MyFitnessPal. Currently has the largest food repository in the world. And a lot of people are like, wow, that's great because I'm going to eat so many different varieties of food. But the reality is, you're not really going to. You won't necessarily eat that much, or you won't eat that many varieties of food. What you'll find is you'll get yourself into a pattern. And these apps are great because they'll start to remember, okay, what did Tim have for breakfast the last 4 days? Okay, I'm going to auto populate that and see if Tim is okay with just me auto populating his breakfast because he is so on the money every single day. He's so consistent with his breakfast. It's very easy once you set it up. Another one, Chronometer, is pretty good. That one's highly ranked. And then another one is called Lose It. These should be available for both iOS platform and Android platform. Now, not everyone is okay or comfortable with using an app. Some people think that can be very overwhelming, and that's okay. So one of the things that I recommend to a lot of my clients when measuring protein is using your hands. So I like to use the palm rule, and here are just 3 quick examples. Feel free to reach out to me individually if you've got some other protein sources that you want some easy ways to manage it or measure it. So if I had 4 ounces of steak, that's going to fit in the palm of my hand. For smaller people, like smaller women or smaller men, that might be about 3 ounces, but you're going to see that range 25 to 30 grams of protein just here. So if I know that I'm trying to hit 100 grams a day and I'm eating animal protein for lunch and dinner, forget about breakfast for a second. Lunch and dinner, I can just use the palm method. I don't need a fancy food scale. I don't need a fancy app. And if I measure my protein source in my palm and I'm doing steak, let's just say twice a day, I know I'm getting roughly 60 grams from those 2 meals, not including snacks, not including breakfast or anything like that. So once you start to unlock that and realize, oh, wow, I can measure this stuff, it's not that difficult, then you can learn the foods that you like to enjoy, the lean protein sources, and you'll be able to measure them with just the use of your hand. Same thing with salmon or tuna or your favorite type of seafood, 20 to 25 grams there. Let's say you're a chicken breast person, 1 palm of there, 4 ounces there, 30 to 35 grams of protein. So those are things that are really easy to start to adopt in your lifestyle. And once you just start to figure out, all right, maybe I'll just start with 1 meal a day. I'll start with lunch and let me just start to take notice. How much protein am I getting in my lunch? Use the palm. You don't need anything else but just your hand and your eyes. And after that, you can start making a habit of, okay, I'm getting enough protein for my lunch. Now let me move on to dinner. Let me start to change some habits around my dinner as well. Okay. All right. I know, I think we had someone join us a little bit later, but I'm going to sum up with this one and then we'll get into some Q&A. My Q&A or my key takeaway for this one is what gets measured gets managed. And this is not an accident that I have this money little logo or graphic here, right? So most of us, if we're trying to improve something like our finances, which should be important to a lot of us, we need to start to manage that. How much am I bringing in versus how much am I spending? And in the same way with food, so many people get overwhelmed with measuring their food and things like that. But if you start with the most important macronutrient, which is protein, and start to measure that, then you will have a much better job of managing things. So with that being said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'll open it up for some questions. Kevin, I know you, like I said, you jumped on, but Tim, I'll start with you. Any questions that you've got or observations so far, my friend?
No, I think I'm good. I done that palm thing one time. I went to the gym and they put me on a protein diet, right? I was eating 7 times a day, every
Wow.
2 hours. Every 2 hours.
Okay.
Handful of green, palm of protein, and a thumb full of good fat is where they measured it.
Okay.
So my good fat was almond butter. That was
Yes.
easy because I don't really like avocado.
Yes, sir.
Uh, my breakfast was usually a couple boiled eggs, whites only. But when I done it, I dropped like 8 pounds in a week, and I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I sort of
Yeah.
freaked out. I said, look, I don't need to lose weight. That ain't what I'm
Sure.
trying to do here.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that because I was working out at the time too. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Right.
Yeah. Uh, so I ended up stopped doing it. But I ate every 2 hours for, I think I done it for a month.
Did you like the every 2 hours, or were you a guy that was more comfortable with eating just maybe 2 or 3 larger meals a day and maybe a snack or two a day?
I sort of liked the every 2 hours. I didn't get hungry, and I wasn't even snacking.
So here's what you could think about. If you ever wanted to go back to that, that's a great idea. Now, one thing you noticed was your caloric intake. If it falls below what your basal metabolic output is, which is also a reading that you got on the sheet that when you and I met, it's on your sheet. And I'll go back to the other sheet in a second so you can see it visually. So when you go back, you can see that. If your calories are too low for what you're putting out with energy, with work, working out, even though you're eating 7 times a day, you will lose weight, right? It's simple calories in, calories out. So what you could do if you want to go back to something like that, you could do a couple of things. You could increase the protein. You could maybe go a palm and a half each one of your meals. You could also increase your fat and play around with that. Maybe 2 thumbs each time. Like you said, if almond butter is your thing and you like that, that's great. Stick with that. So increase your fat intake and also increase the protein intake, and that will naturally bring your calories up and that will level you off so you're not continuing to see that decline. Because, like you said, you're a pretty lean guy already. And so 8 pounds coming off your frame, Tim, is going to be pretty noticeable, right? Pretty
Yeah.
devastating. You'd be going to the store within a few weeks and trying to find new clothes because they wouldn't fit anymore.
Right. Yeah, I dropped way too much weight, and cause me and the wife was doing it together at that time.
Yeah.
She was like, "Man, you done dropped that much. I can't." So my metabolic rate was 1371. I got the
Okay.
paper here in front of me. I still got the paper you gave me.
Perfect.
Yeah, I
So
kept it.
So that is your basal. So the BMR stands for basal metabolic rate. So the key word is basal. That 1300 number you gave me, that would be if you just stared at a blank wall and sat in a chair for 15 hours a day. Doesn't count working out, doing all the push-ups and squats you're doing, going to work, none of that. So if you're trying to make sure you don't lose, you're probably going to want to play around with adding 300 to 400 calories on top of that potential, depending on how much you're averaging out. I couldn't remember if you told me you're your job right now is inside or if you're out in the field very active. I don't know. But that's what we would do. We play around with that number and get you some more calories, keep that same proportion like you had been, and let's see if you can level off by going back to that every 2 hours, if that's what you like.
So right now I'm eating lunch. I'm trying to eat more protein, but every
Yep.
morning I'm having a high calorie protein shake
Okay.
every morning with whole milk.
Okay.
Uh, and then I work out every evening. I eat lunch, and then the wife cooks the protein and the vegetables, and we've been doing that for a while now.
Okay.
And I eat a lot of fruit, so
Okay.
a lot of fruit.
Yeah. Um, so just adding a little bit more calorie dense, maybe a little less fruit with the carbs, and you can add a little bit more dense carbohydrate, like a sweet potato, rice, things like that. That wouldn't be a bad idea for a guy like you because you can handle carbs pretty well. Not all of us can. So you could go with a dense carb as well and change that up too and see how that goes for you.
Okay.
But I like that. Sweet. All right, Kevin, I had let's see. Let me I don't know if Kevin, you're still there. I'd love for you to unmute and let's hear
I'm
what's going on.
unmuted.
Yeah. So I know you got on a little bit late, but like I said, this is being recorded. So wanted to make sure I answered any questions you had or if you had any thoughts, feedback so far. How's the challenge going, man?
I don't know. I haven't really changed much on eating wise, other than trying to go to grilled chicken versus fried chicken,
Okay.
and Really ain't been doing much different on food. I mean, I only eat 2 meals a day. Either I eat at lunch and then I eat at home at night. So I've been cutting out the sugar at night.
How's the water going?
Oh, I've been drinking a lot more water, and look, I've had one Dr. Pepper today.
Okay, okay.
One Dr. Pepper so far today, and then mostly water.
And when you and I met, you were having what, 6 a day? Is that what you were telling me?
Usually about 6 a day.
All right. Well, shoot, you might lose a decent amount of weight there, right there. Let's see. Yeah, 3. I'm pulling up your notes. So just so you know, Kevin, I don't know if you can see, this is your notes for me and you's conversation.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we were shooting for 6 bottles of water a day. We're gonna do it. We went down to 3, which sounds like you're down to 1. Any more spelunking? I know we talked about this last week. I don't know if you got out there.
No, we got it. That's something that we have to plot and plan
That's
and
right.
get around because that's over in Alabama and
That's right.
hard to have time to get doing that. But
And then you also told me when we met a few weeks ago at the office that you were thinking about taking your daughter with you, your teenage daughter with you a couple times a week. How's that going to the gym?
that ain't even been a thought much lately because by the time I get home from the job, it takes me about an hour and 30 minutes to get home from this job site. So I'm not even getting home till like almost 6 o'clock every night.
Yeah, I got you.
And then yeah, it's usually about a 2.5 hour ride home from the job site I'm on. So
That's brutal.
by the time I get to the house, it's usually right at 6.
What time do you are you a morning guy? Do you like waking up early and getting out, or you sleep in a little bit? How's that work?
No, my alarm clock goes off at 4:30. I'm out the door at 5 to be at the job by 6:30.
Yeah. Yeah.
And most mornings I'm there 6:30, 6:45 ish.
What about tell me about your lunch break. How much time do you get for lunch? What I know where you go to eat, but I'm just saying how much time do you get?
1 hour's it.
Okay. Yeah.
And
One of the things
late,
yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I have been trying to do the grilled Chick-fil-A at
Yeah.
lunch a little bit more. Um, but that's about the only thing different as far as that. I haven't been to Arby's at all this week. I haven't been to Taco Bell or none of
Well,
that
shoot,
this
man, you
week. So
still don't ignore the fact that you were doing 6 Dr. Peppers a day, right? I
yeah.
mean, shoot, and now you're down to 1. So I mean, you're going to see some changes just off that. So don't beat yourself up there, man. That's a huge win for you. One thing I'm curious to ask you about, like if we could come up with like a 10-minute circuit, a little bit of just body weight stuff that you could do during your lunch hour right before you go to Chick-fil-A and get your grilled chicken and get your kale side and you get your unsweet tea, right? Like, could you foresee yourself doing that? Like, is that possible in that 1 hour time that you have middle of the day?
I'm usually I've been putting in about 2 miles a day walking on the job site.
Okay. Okay.
Um, but that's just an everyday thing kind of
Yeah.
ordeal.
Okay.
I've been watching my fitness app on my phone and
Okay.
it's averaging about 2.6 miles a
How many,
day.
just curious, how many steps is that? Is that like 12 to 14,000?
No, a minute, I can pull it up.
Yeah.
It says so today I did 1.8 miles and it's 2,972 steps.
2,000?
Yeah.
That's it.
But let's see if we go to the average. Well, today I didn't do a whole lot of walking because it was raining on the job site today. So
I got you.
we
Yeah.
had rain all the way till about 1 o'clock. And then after 1 o'clock, I was able to get up and move around a little bit more. But for the most part, I was in the building most of the day.
Okay. Understood. Okay.
Usually, if it ain't raining, I'm out walking around on the job site. That's a
Yeah.
lot more. But today, my steps were down quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. So that's only about 4 to 5,000 steps a day if you're doing 2 miles. Okay.
It says 2.13 miles is my average right now, which is 5,614 steps.
Yeah. Do you feel like walking when you get home, or are you just exhausted, just happy to get out of the car and, plump down for dinner and then go to bed? Like, what is evening? You get home at 6. What happens at 6?
Take care of my baby, take care of my 6-year-old, and
Yep. Yep.
that's about it. I mean,
I got you.
not much time between there and bedtime.
Yeah, understood. Understood. Okay. I'm just thinking a little bit more about that lunchtime. We could do a couple things. Let me give that some thought. I'm going to be reaching out. Chris and I had a conversation. I'm going to be reaching out to everybody individually through the WhatsApp and just connecting with you all one-on-one and maybe coming up with some individual things. So I want to think a little bit more on your lunch thing. But that's think where we might have a shot at getting a little bit more activity in during that lunch hour and still have time to eat. So don't think I'm trying to take away your food at lunch.
Yes, sir.
All right. All right, gents. Any other questions?
Not for me.
Awesome.
No, I'm good.
It's good to hear y'all's voices again. We are going to get a call in next week. I know a lot of times when Thanksgiving is at the end of the month, people think, "Oh, wait a minute, it's next week Thanksgiving." It's not. It's going to be 2 weeks from today. So we will schedule a next Zoom call. I'll post it in WhatsApp along with the link and the subject matter. You guys are doing amazing. Appreciate y'all spending time with me on these Zoom calls, and I will see you next week. We'll do it again.
Yeah, I was busy and I walked out. I got home before the dark and walked out through my back of my property to go hunting for a few minutes. So,
Sure. Yes, sir.
yeah, and then the next you know, it's dark.
No worries.
Well, talk to you later in the week.
All right, Tim and Kevin, y'all enjoy.